Let me tell you a story, not about a poor man who became rich, but about a rich man who became poor. There was once a man who had everything most people spend their entire lives chasing: wealth, success, respect. He owned a beautiful home, drove expensive car. His business made millions. People admired him. Some even envied him. And if you had met him during those years, you might have believed he had life completely figured out. But tell me something. Have you ever noticed how quickly success can change a person? Because the truth is, the same success that builds a man can also destroy him. And the man in this story would eventually lose everything: his wealth, his reputation, his friends, even the trust of his own family, until one cold night, the millionaire who once owned everything was sitting on a sidewalk, wearing torn clothes, holding a cup, asking strangers for spare change. So how does a man go from millions to homelessness? That is the story I want to share with you today. Stories like this often make people ask the same question: how could someone who had so much lose it all? Was it bad luck, a financial crisis, a dishonest partner, or something far more dangerous, something that begins quietly and grows slowly until one day it destroys everything? The truth is, this man did not become poor overnight. His downfall began many years earlier, at the very moment his success started to grow. Because wealth can build a man's life, but it can also test his character. And in this story, success would slowly change the man who once earned it. To understand how a millionaire became homeless, we must first go back to the beginning, back to the years when his ambition was still strong and his discipline was still intact. The man in this story was not born wealthy. In fact, he began life like many others, with big dreams, a strong work ethic, and the determination to build something greater than the life he started with. In his early years, he worked longer hours than most people were willing to work. While others were resting, he was studying his craft. While others were spending their money, he was reinvesting it. Slowly, his efforts began to pay off. His business started growing. Opportunities appeared. The money began to flow. Year after year, his success expanded. The small office became a larger one. The modest car became a luxury car. The simple house became a mansion. People admired what he had built. Some called him brilliant. Others called him lucky. But very few people understood the sacrifices he had made to get there. And for a long time, his success was well deserved. But there is something important about success that many people do not realize. The same success that rewards discipline can slowly begin to weaken it. And when a man begins believing that success will last forever, that is often when the first mistakes begin. For many years, the man continued to grow his wealth. His business expanded, his reputation grew, and his lifestyle became more luxurious with each passing year. But success has a quiet way of changing a person. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, almost invisibly. The habits that once built his success began to fade. The long nights studying his business became shorter. The careful decisions became quicker. The discipline that once guided him began to loosen. At first, no one noticed, because the money was still flowing, and when money is still flowing, people rarely question their decisions. Tell me something. Have you ever seen someone become successful and slowly begin to believe the rules no longer apply to them? That is where the danger begins. The man who once respected every dollar now began spending them freely. The man who once listened carefully to advice now believed he knew better than everyone else. And the man who once built his success through discipline was beginning to lose it. But the most dangerous part of arrogance is that it rarely feels like arrogance while it's happening. To the man himself, it simply felt like confidence. Success does not only change a man's lifestyle. Sometimes, it begins to change the way he treats people. In the early years, the man in this story valued the people around him, friends who supported him, partners who believed in him, family who trusted him. But as his wealth grew, something else began to grow as well: pride. The man who once listened carefully now believed he always knew better. and slowly his decisions began affecting the people closest to him. At first, the problem seemed small: a friend who loaned him money, waiting longer than expected to be repaid, a business partner who raised concerns only to be ignored, promises made quickly and forgotten just as quickly. Tell me something. Have you ever trusted someone only to watch success slowly change who they are? The people around him began noticing something. The man who once built his success through discipline was beginning to believe he could never fail. And when a person begins believing they cannot fail, that is often when failure begins quietly approaching. For many years, the man believed his success could never disappear. His business had grown too large, his reputation too strong, his wealth too secure. But life has a quiet way of testing that kind of confidence. The first problems began inside his business: a risky investment that did not go as planned, then another decision that cost far more than expected. At first, the losses seemed manageable. After all, he was a wealthy man. But tell me something. Have you ever noticed how quickly small problems can grow when they are ignored? The man believed the money would return, that his success would recover, so he took bigger risks, borrowed more money, made faster decisions, but this time, the money did not return. The business that once brought him millions began losing more than it earned. Debt began piling up, investors began asking questions, partners began stepping away, and the friends who once admired his success slowly stopped answering his calls. The man who once stood proudly at the top of his world was beginning to watch it collapse around him. In the end, the collapse did not happen all at once. It happened piece by piece, decision by decision, mistake by mistake, until finally, there was nothing left to lose. The business was gone, the house was gone, the cars were gone, and the people who once admired him were no longer there. The friends who once surrounded him had disappeared. The partners who once trusted him had moved on. Even his family no longer believed the promises he made. Because broken trust is far harder to rebuild than lost money. And one cold night, the man who once owned a mansion was sitting alone on a sidewalk, wearing clothes that were worn and dirty, holding a small paper cup in his hand, watching strangers walk past him without even looking. Imagine that moment. Yesterday, people admired your success. Today, they avoid your eyes. The millionaire who once believed he could never fail had finally reached the place he feared the most: rock bottom. And so the man who once had everything now had nothing. No mansion, no business, no reputation, only a cold sidewalk, and the long silence that comes when a man finally faces the truth. That night, sitting there with a small cup in his hand, the man finally understood something he had never understood while he was rich. Losing money is painful, but losing the trust of the people who once believed in you is far worse. Because money can be rebuilt, but trust must be earned again from the beginning. Tell me something. What is the true measure of wealth? Is it the size of a man's house, the number of cars he owns, or the number of people who would stand beside him when everything falls apart? The man who once believed his wealth made him powerful was now learning a different truth. Wealth without discipline is temporary. Wealth without humility is dangerous. And wealth without integrity rarely lasts. The world believed the story of this man had ended, a millionaire who lost everything. But the most powerful part of this story had not happened yet. Because sometimes, when a man loses everything, he finally gains the wisdom he needed all along. And the homeless man sitting on that sidewalk that night would one day rebuild everything he lost.